While the world fixates on individual battlefields from Ukraine to Sudan, there's one critical factor 99% of people are completely missing. 2025 has become the first year in modern history where global chaos itself has evolved into a systematically profitable business model. What appears to be random international turmoil is actually the emergence of a coordinated conflict economy. And the real winners aren't the nations fighting, but the shadow architects who profit from perpetual instability. The invisible war machine. How chaos became commerce. The numbers tell a story that mainstream analysis deliberately ignores. With conflicts raging across Ukraine, Gaza, Sudan, Myanmar, and the Democratic Republic of Congo simultaneously, we're witnessing the highest global death toll from warfare in decades. But here's the perspective no one dares to acknowledge. This isn't coincidental chaos, it's engineered profitability. Consider the timing. Russia's war in Ukraine reaches day 1,219, just as Israel concludes a 12-day conflict with Iran. While Sudan's civil war intensifies and Myanmar's earthquake reshuffles an already chaotic civil war. The Rwanda-backed M23 rebels capture Goma in the DRC, and North Korea prepares to deploy additional troops to Russia. These events aren't happening in isolation. They're interconnected nodes in a vast economic network that thrives on sustained conflict. The invisible hand orchestrating this isn't any single government or organization. It's a decentralized system of financial incentives that has transformed warfare from a political tool into a sustainable economic sector. The traditional arms industry has evolved into something far more sophisticated, a chaos industrial complex that profits not just from selling weapons, but from the entire infrastructure of sustained conflict. Russia's revolutionary debt model. The financial innovation nobody discusses. Deep within Russia's war financing lies a revelation that changes everything we think we know about modern conflict economics. Moscow hasn't just been funding its Ukraine invasion through conventional defense budgets. It has pioneered an entirely new model of hidden state borrowing that could reshape how nations finance prolonged conflicts. Since February 2022, Russia has directed its major banks to extend preferential loans to war-related businesses, creating what amounts to a shadow military-industrial financing system. This off-budget scheme has generated approximately 36.6 trillion Russian ruble, $446 billion, in corporate borrowing, a figure that dwarfs official defense spending and represents a financial innovation with global implications. But here's what makes this truly revolutionary. Russia has essentially outsourced the financial risk of warfare to its banking sector while maintaining the political benefits of manageable defense budgets. This model allows governments to wage extended conflicts without the traditional fiscal constraints that historically limited war duration. The genius and danger of this system is that it transforms banks into unwitting partners in conflict finance. When the central bank of Russia raised rates to 21% to combat inflation, it discovered that companies with preferential loans continued borrowing at unprecedented rates, completely insensitive to market conditions. This reveals that Russia has created a war economy immune to traditional economic pressures. Other nations are quietly studying this model. If successfully replicated, it could enable conflicts that are financially sustainable for decades rather than years, fundamentally altering the mathematics of international warfare. The Sudan Blueprint. When arms dealing becomes infrastructure while international attention focuses on Sudan's humanitarian catastrophe, a parallel economy has emerged that treats the civil war not as a crisis to be resolved, but as a market opportunity to be optimized. The conflict between the Sudanese armed forces and rapid support forces has become a testing ground for a new generation of conflict entrepreneurs who profit from sustained instability. Private arms manufacturers have developed what industry insiders call dual-track supply chains, officially selling to recognized governments while maintaining shadow networks that ensure both sides of conflicts remain adequately supplied. In Sudan, this has created a perverse equilibrium where neither side can achieve decisive victory, but both remain capable of continued fighting. The most revealing aspect of this system is its predictive nature. Construction companies are securing post-war reconstruction contracts before conflicts end, suggesting that war duration and destruction levels are being calculated as investment variables rather than humanitarian concerns. Energy companies are positioning themselves for resource extraction in regions that haven't even fallen yet. This represents a fundamental shift from the historical model where war was seen as a disruption to commerce. In Sudan, warfare has become commerce itself, with profit margins calculated based on conflict intensity and duration rather than resolution. The North Korean revelation. Military outsourcing as economic strategy. South Korean intelligence reports that North Korea is preparing to deploy additional troops to support Russia's Ukraine operation. Represent more than military cooperation. They signal the emergence of warfare as a service, as a legitimate economic sector. For North Korea, providing military personnel to Russia isn't just alliance solidarity. It's a revenue stream that could prove more profitable than traditional sanctions evading exports. This model treats military capacity as an exportable commodity, similar to how other nations export oil or agricultural products. The implications extend far beyond the Ukraine conflict. If successful, this could establish a precedent where nations with large standing armies but limited economic opportunities become military contractors for wealthier countries pursuing geopolitical objectives. This would fundamentally alter the global balance of power by allowing economic powerhouses to wage conflicts without depleting their own human resources. Russia's willingness to accept foreign troops also signals a shift in how major powers view sovereignty in warfare. The traditional notion that conflicts must be fought primarily with domestic forces is being replaced by a more transactional approach where military capability can be purchased and deployed across borders. The Myanmar catalyst. How natural disasters become strategic opportunities. The recent earthquake in Myanmar, killing nearly 4,000 people and causing massive infrastructure damage, might appear to be a humanitarian tragedy that complicates an already chaotic civil war. But analyzing this event through the reverse lens reveals something far more calculated. Natural disasters have become accelerants for strategic positioning rather than calls for humanitarian pause. The earthquake struck at a moment when armed rebel groups controlled the majority of Myanmar's territory, including crucial rare earth mineral mines worth $1.4 billion annually in trade with China. Rather than prompting relief efforts, the disaster has become a strategic opportunity for various factions to consolidate control over valuable resources while the government struggles to respond. China's response to the earthquake is particularly revealing. Instead of purely humanitarian aid, Beijing is using the crisis to strengthen relationships with rebel groups that control mineral extraction sites, effectively treating the natural disaster as a business opportunity to secure resource access independent of Myanmar's central government. This pattern is emerging globally. Natural disasters in conflict zones are increasingly viewed as strategic windows rather than humanitarian emergencies. The calculation appears to be that periods of crisis create power vacuums that can be exploited for long-term economic and strategic gain. The DRC laboratory, testing the limits of resource war. The M23 rebel group's capture of Goma, backed by 3,000 to 4,000 Rwandan troops, represents more than territorial expansion. It's a beta test for a new model of resource extraction through controlled instability. The Democratic Republic of Congo has become a laboratory for refining techniques that allow external powers to access valuable resources without the political complications of direct occupation. Rwanda's backing of M23 isn't primarily about regional influence. It's about developing a sustainable method for resource extraction that operates below the threshold of international intervention, by maintaining plausible deniability while supporting proxy forces. Rwanda has created a model that other nations are studying for potential replication. The genius of this approach is that it maintains just enough instability to prevent effective governance while avoiding the complete collapse that would disrupt resource extraction. It's a calibrated chaos that maximizes economic benefit while minimizing international pushback. The United States reported consideration of increased security cooperation with the DRC in exchange for exclusive mineral rights reveals that even traditional powers are adapting to this new model. Rather than seeking stability and good governance, major powers are increasingly willing to accept managed instability in exchange for resource access. The Israel-Iran theater. Precision conflict as economic signal. The recently concluded 12-day Israel-Iran war, despite its intensity, functioned more as an economic signaling mechanism than a traditional military conflict. The precision and timing of this conflict reveal characteristics that distinguish it from conventional warfare. It was designed to achieve specific economic and strategic objectives within a predetermined time frame. Israel's strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities weren't just military actions. They were market interventions designed to reshape regional energy dynamics and defense spending priorities. The involvement of U.S. forces with the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator wasn't just military support. It was a demonstration of technical capabilities that will drive defense procurement decisions globally for years to come. The conflict's 12-day duration appears to have been calculated based on market absorption capacity rather than military objectives. Longer conflicts risk global economic disruption. Shorter ones don't provide sufficient demonstration of capabilities to drive defense spending. The timing was calibrated to maximize strategic demonstration while minimizing economic disruption. Iran's restrained response, launching only 14 missiles despite suffering unprecedented attacks, suggests that both sides understood this conflict as a bounded demonstration rather than existential warfare. This represents a new category of performative warfare designed to achieve economic and strategic signaling objectives rather than traditional military victory. The silent architects, who really controls the chaos economy behind these seemingly disparate conflicts, operates a network of financial institutions, defense contractors, and resource extraction companies that have evolved beyond traditional war profiteering into something more systematic: chaos optimization. These entities don't simply profit from existing conflicts. They create market conditions that make sustained instability more profitable than peace. The most revealing aspect of this system is its predictive financing. Infrastructure loans for post-conflict reconstruction are being negotiated while conflicts are still escalating. Resource extraction rights are being allocated for territories not yet captured. Defense contractors are receiving orders for weapon systems designed to fight wars that haven't officially begun. This isn't opportunistic profiteering, it's systematic market creation. The traditional model where peace was the natural state, punctuated by occasional conflict, has been replaced by a model where managed instability is the profitable norm, with peace becoming a temporary market disruption. The financing mechanisms behind this system reveal its sophistication. Traditional war bonds and defense spending have been supplemented by complex financial instruments that treat conflict zones as investment opportunities. Stability derivatives, reconstruction futures, and refugee resettlement bonds have created financial incentives for sustained instability rather than conflict resolution. Historical precedent. The 1970s template for modern chaos, the current global conflict pattern closely mirrors the deliberate destabilization strategies of the 1970s, when multiple proxy conflicts served the strategic interests of superpowers while generating massive profits for defense and resource extraction industries. However, the current model has evolved beyond superpower competition into a more distributed system where multiple actors benefit from sustained global instability. The key difference is scale and coordination. Where 1970s conflicts were primarily regional with global implications, 2025's conflicts are globally coordinated with regional manifestations. The financial instruments that enable this coordination didn't exist in the 1970s. allowing for unprecedented coordination between seemingly independent conflicts. The Afghanistan model provides the clearest historical template. A conflict that began with specific geopolitical objectives evolved into a self-sustaining economic system that persisted long after its original strategic rationale disappeared. The current global conflict system appears designed to replicate this sustainability on a planetary scale. The 50-year projection, Permanent Managed Instability viewed from 2075, the events of 2025 will likely be remembered as the year global governance transitioned from nation-state competition to corporate conflict management. The traditional Westphalian system of sovereign states competing for resources and influence is being replaced by a system where sustained instability generates more profit than stability or decisive victory. The technological capabilities demonstrated in recent conflicts, from precision long-range strikes to real-time conflict financing, suggests that future conflicts will be even more precisely calibrated for economic optimization. Artificial intelligence and predictive analytics are likely to enable conflict management systems that can maintain optimal instability levels across multiple theaters simultaneously. The most significant long-term consequence may be the obsolescence of traditional peace negotiations. If sustained instability becomes more profitable than resolution, the economic incentives that historically drove conflict termination disappear. Peace processes may evolve into instability management conferences designed to optimize rather than eliminate conflict. The information smokescreen. Why media misses the pattern. Mainstream media coverage of current conflicts focuses on immediate tactical developments and humanitarian consequences, while systematically ignoring the economic architecture that sustains them. This isn't accidental, it's structurally necessary for the system to function. The fragmentation of conflict coverage into separate stories. Ukraine war, Israel-Iran conflict, Sudan crisis, prevents public recognition of the coordinated economic system that connects them. Each conflict is presented as having unique local causes rather than being manifestations of a global economic model. The most revealing aspect of media coverage is its timing patterns. Conflicts receive intensive coverage during escalation phases but minimal attention during the sustained phases where the real profits are generated. This creates public perception that conflicts are episodic rather than systematic, preventing recognition of their economic function. The complete picture, only outsiders can see. What emerges from connecting these dots is not a world spiraling toward chaos, but a world where chaos has been systematically organized into a profitable and sustainable economic model. The apparent randomness of global conflicts masks a sophisticated system designed to maintain optimal levels of instability for maximum economic extraction. The traditional question, how do we achieve peace, has been replaced by the economic calculation, how do we optimize instability? This represents the most significant transformation in international relations since the end of the Cold War. Yet it operates almost entirely below the threshold of public recognition. The implications for international law, humanitarian intervention, and traditional diplomacy are profound. Institutions designed to resolve conflicts are increasingly irrelevant in a system where sustained instability is the desired outcome rather than an unfortunate byproduct of political competition. If this analysis proves correct, we'll witness the emergence of conflict management corporations within the next 5 years, entities that openly provide end-to-end instability services rather than hiding behind traditional defense contracting. The year 2025 may be remembered as the moment when warfare completed its transformation from political tool to economic sector, with consequences that will reshape human civilization for decades to come. The chess masters observing from outside the board can see what those playing within it cannot. The game itself has fundamentally changed, and most of the world doesn't even realize they're playing by completely different rules.